Hi everyone, my name is Tam. I am with Create Business, and today I am sitting next to Keith MacQueen. Hey Keith,
How are you, Tam?
I am good. I was just saying
Good.
before, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope we do get some people joining us on Facebook and saying hi to us and in chat. But as I was saying, I really love just having these conversations with different people on the Create Business Facebook page because I get to ask questions that I'm dying to ask. Congratulations on your new role. Tell me
Thank you.
where you're working, what you're doing right now.
So, yes, I'm the executive officer at Lead Loddon Mallee, and we've got it's an organisation with a long history. From 1998 it started, and I guess the primary focus
That's not that
is
long.
run. Well, for a lot of organisations, it's relatively long.
I guess is it 22 years?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So and when I think about where I was 22 years ago, in that
Yeah.
intervening time, I've lived in Cockatoo,
You're right.
Brighton, Parkdale. Now,
Cool. Okay, I think I've just lost Keith. I will see if I can get him back in. We'll see how we go. That was really interesting hearing about Keith. Here we go. He is coming back in. And thank you for our two viewers that are watching us. Hi.
oh, I'm back. I don't know
I
what happened there. I didn't touch anything, honest.
I knew you'd come back. Oh, we have got Ruth Barclay here with us. Hi, Ruth. And Theo. Hi, Theo. It is good to hear from you. Ruth and Theo, if you've got some questions or ideas you'd like to share with us about leadership and creating influence, love to hear from you. So you were just telling me about what you've been doing the last 22 years and what you're doing right now.
Yes. Well, that's it. And in between, I spent 6 years in Western Australia, which was a great experience. And I worked in for Bendigo and Adelaide Bank in the community bank space. So my role was basically, I guess, engaging with communities and also government. But the community banks are really unique and fantastic structures. So basically, the local community sets up a community-owned company. They run a banking business, but with Bendigo Bank providing the banking license, all the banking products, all that sort of thing. But the communities own what we'd refer to as the shop front. They employ the staff, pay the rent, turn the lights on, but then they share in the revenue that gets generated. And those organisations put their money back into community. So what I
It's a
saw,
such a model.
it is, and so I got to meet, I got to engage with hundreds of communities right around the country, and I got to meet people who were true community leaders. They were not formal leaders from the community. They were people though who managed to motivate the community to put in their hard-earned dollars to raise the capital for the company, but then with no big expectation of getting money back as such, but to see the revenue going towards community outcomes and projects and that sort of thing. So for me,
There's
a
something.
transition to Lead Loddon Mallee and community leadership was just a natural transition for me.
Mm. There's something about that value base driving an organization, isn't it? So right now you're the executive officer with Lead Loddon Mallee. I was excited to see that pop up on my LinkedIn feed because I know you've got a lot to offer. So what is this thing about leadership and rural communities? Why is it so important?
Um, it's a really interesting thing, and there's no doubt. And I've been lucky enough to see engaged urban communities as well as rural communities. But there is that special feeling you get in rural and regional communities around that I reckon people are a lot more in terms of doers on a local level. In more metropolitan and urban areas, we probably see people who probably, if they're thinking of doing leadership, they think on a bigger scale because there's such a big concentration of people around, and there's more resourcing available and that sort of thing. So people tend, we see people who perhaps some of the big social enterprises and big impact things come from those areas, but in rural and regional communities, people have probably more scarce resource in terms of funding and that sort of thing. So we see people who actually realise a lot more around that participation. And so we see informal community leaders who are very good at getting people in behind a project to do things and to create outcomes. I think it's something like through all this, through the COVID challenge that we've had, and I think of Bendigo Food Share. Now, Bendigo Food Share, the need for what they do has ramped up through these times because of the families who are going through difficult situations. But they've actually stepped up to the plate, and especially using social media. But then they also had that the biggest takeaway that was on the other weekend. They got a lot of local businesses to participate. And they've also had a lot of local businesses making food for them so they can distribute the meals through their network. So there's a great example of stepping up on a local basis through these hard times by showing leadership and connecting better. I think Bendigo Food Share are brilliant what they do.
Yeah, done an awesome job. I interviewed Bridget a couple of weeks ago about how they really have transformed from rattling tins to making sure when a payment goes through for a takeaway that they're getting a donation, which is a great way of thinking. And Ruth just made a comment here that communities are all different. They need to lead because they need to work in a way that is unique for their situation and relationships. And I really think COVID has just, highlighted that even more.
Yeah. Look, communities are all different, but they have similarities. And I don't think, I think community leadership itself is there's similarities across the different communities about the people that I've seen who have become those local community leaders. And often they're, naturally people who tend to be in respected positions. They not necessarily, like I referred to before, not necessarily in formal positions of leadership, but they're people who have strong networks throughout the community. So they're well connected. Now, that's probably been through being involved in organisations and those sort of things. But yeah, they're not necessarily people who are elected to be leaders. Yeah. But they're just the people who step up and have the right, exactly as you said before, Tam, values. And I think that's a big thing about leadership is people who put the values on the table, especially informal leadership like that, is people, it's like setting a vision. You tend to follow people because of the right values that connect to what you're doing. Yeah.
I'd just love to pause for a second on that idea of, leaders and networks, which kind of moves me into that idea of, creating influence. Yeah. Because I know well, for me, my networks are just so important. They keep me buoyant. And, when I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do next? But also they can help me, when someone else has a problem, they've got an idea, I can help connect people together and get things off the ground. In your work in, backing communities and now moving into backing, individuals in rural communities, what is this generation of influence and how's that working?
Yeah, and a lot of it's that, I guess, typical way of doing influence is I referred to networks before, and it's also about everyone knows someone, and it's about having that right connection, but not necessarily having it only for an ulterior motive. When I was in community bank land, we would have conversations with a lot of communities. In Western Australia, I visited a lot of communities that didn't open a community bank or have a community bank. But it became important around those connections and networks that help to build. And it's not always about going somewhere because you're wanting to sell something or because you want something out of someone. And it's conversations, having a lot of conversations, and over time you start to, I guess, what happens is things naturally come up where you go, I know someone. And there's, I think, one of the big projects I was involved in just before I left Bendigo and Adelaide Bank was around localised emergency recovery appeals. So we had a foundation structure, and local communities love, if they're challenged, they really come together. There's nothing like a challenge to bring them together. And we used to see, and I think of, Black Saturday, the floods up here in northern Victoria back in 2010 was it, or something. And then the local communities want to donate money specifically to their community. And so we were setting up structures that would allow that donation to happen by their local community bank. What we recognised was that we needed to also plug in and complement formal structures. So we started engaging with Emergency Management Victoria because they're the formal structure. Now, what that led to was our community banks, they're sort of formal it's a corporate structure, but they're informal community leaders. But then they began to sit on the local emergency management committees with groups like CFA and SES, all those sort of groups. So you think emergency management, well, what I would say has probably been missed through a lot of this COVID, I guess, response, and that is probably that community consultation. And where has community been around the table is probably one of the, I guess, criticisms I'd have, is that we haven't seen community solution engaged enough. But there's no doubt when we get in.
First people that I've had have talked about that.
Yeah. And there's no doubt when we get into recovery, community is going to be vital. When you think of what we've lost in terms of the sporting clubs, I mean, for kids, there's no doubt the sporting clubs are important. And we're talking about all sorts of activity clubs, not just football, netball. You were saying about your daughter and dancing, Tam. Those sort of clubs as well, because we know that what clubs do is they make people get to know other people and care about their community because they care about other community members. So the place of the leadership of sporting organisations is going to be important for recovery. Things like we think of here in Bendigo with the Blues and Roots Festival. Now that's totally volunteer run, but what a great community the music community is in Bendigo. That's going to need that informal leadership to come together to bring that community. They've been missing for 8 months. And suddenly they're going to have to spring back to life. Right. Dave Hughes and what he's doing at Emporium is going to be important around that as well.
Yeah, it is really complicated, and I know for us personally, not having sport, and that informal interaction for our family has had some pretty devastating impact. So we are very much looking forward to getting back out there. So just in terms of, I haven't got that much longer with you, but I'd like to just dig a little bit deeper into that notion of creating influence, and maybe influence is even the wrong word now that I'm thinking about it, networks or leadership.
Yeah.
you know, through COVID and doing that virtually. What are you thinking here? How can we enhance that?
And I see Ruth has put a comment there too around that networks through COVID have been great, and that is that yes, networks are vital, and we say about creating influence. You're right. It's the way to create influence is through networks and through connection. Now, people have been really adaptive, and we're talking about. I guess some of the learnings that Lead Loddon Mallee have had through this around how do we utilise Zoom, things like that. I know through another informal group that I'm involved in called Music for Mates, we actually organised monthly online trivia nights. So we've even got people coming in from Spain.
Yeah, right.
For that, but people are quick to adapt. And people are actually keen to continue to connect. So it's making sure that you keep networks alive and moving forward, because that's what I guess creates the shared experience, and then hopefully coming out the back end creates a shared vision for where you want to go with it. So, and that's where you get that influence side coming through.
So that idea of leaders, you know, having that role and thinking about how to bring, you know, their networks together, formally, informally. Yeah, would that be part of
it? And sometimes they're not people who we would regard as leaders. They're just people who are willing to step up, and that's where I guess good leadership is allowing other people and finding ways to support other people in creating connection and doing the things that they feel are the right ways to approach these challenges. So a lot of this, and when I talk about community leadership being important in recovery from COVID, it's the fact that community leadership enables everyone to have their place. And it's like a distributive leadership model where it's not concentrated in a few people. What we need to do is allow a lot of people to take the lead and support them in those connections, because it's a multiplier effect. The more people you get creating more connections, the more connections will flow through the whole community. The more connected it is.
Into that thought, I want more discussion around that idea of distributed community leadership. Wouldn't that be interesting to get a lot of people in the room and have a good talk about? Yeah. And just really sort of blow apart, like, well, how are we going to do it? What's it going to look like? How do you get involved?
And there's nothing like a solution that's developed by a lot of people. What we used to encourage our community banks to do when it came time to put money out was run community forums. Let's get the community in the room. Let's talk to them about what the community needs and what are the things you can fund. And if you then bring local government to the table, you can say, well, what are you guys funding? What can we do to help multiply your funding so we get some of these projects done? But you're right, communities that, and I would hope to see a lot of communities start to do more of that engagement in post-COVID and through recovery. So bring the people together to bring up those solutions. And that's what distributed leadership is really. It's a consultative approach, and it's not about saying, well, then come up with the idea and then, okay, that's local government's job to do.
Yeah.
No, it's about community then stepping up and saying, well, we can do this ourselves. We can come together. You look at Sam Kane and what he's done at the Golden Square Pool, because there's a community that realised local government wasn't going to do it for them. So they stepped up. And, you know, here's a young fella who's just brought so many people along with him. I mean, he's fantastic. And those are sort of people that you want to develop more of in your communities.
Absolutely, you're right. Ruth has really popped in another comment there about some of the things that she's been doing to network and connect people through COVID. Sounds like, Ruth, you're really putting yourself out there as a leader. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and that's great comments from Ruth. Yeah, you're right, Ruth. Communities need to work from the grassroots, not from top down, especially in recovery. You need to engage community and allow community to take the lead. So to me, it's about seeing that government needs to be the enabler of community activity, not the one who has to do it all.
Emma's agreeing as well. Hi, Emma. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, I wanna talk a bit more about this idea of community-led consultation.
Yeah.
It's definitely a passion of mine. Might have to talk offline. So I'm coming to the end of our session now, Keith. But you know what? I want you to show everyone what's behind you. What do you got?
You know, life is about passions, Tam. And
Look at that. I don't know if you can see. That's all like some of Keith's guitars.
yes, for me, music is a passion. And look, I can say I moved to Bendigo from Perth. I hadn't really lived in Bendigo previously. All the people I knew were from the bank, but because I played music, I quickly was able to make connections in this community and become part of that community. I mean, Tam, your husband Jace, I know Jace through music. So many great people I've met in this town through music, and that's it, because it's its own community, and it is led from the grassroots. There's so many self-organising things happening in the music world. It's great, and I'm sure they will recover too. But you know, there's no doubt allowing people to work from the bottom up is great. And Gina as well. G'day, Gina.
Yeah, we've got some awesome people joining us today. It's nice to be with you all on Facebook. Keith, I am so glad you came and had a chat. I just feel so refreshed hearing, you know, what you're saying and that vision you're carrying there. And great that you've got like a really wide area to carry that vision through. Yeah, it's exciting. Keep up the awesome work.
Thank you, and so many great people to engage with across this region. And a quick plug for Lead Loddon Mallee. Our 2021 program is open for applications, all ages, all walks of life. We're actually really keen to see have a really diverse sort of cohort of people every year going through the program. So if you're interested, jump to our website, Lead Loddon Mallee, or give us a call. You can find our contact details on there. We're happy to talk through it. And it really is that grassroots, community-based leadership that we talk through, and take you on a journey. So many good people have been through it and say what they've got from it. So positive. So good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
No worries, Tam.